A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, behold the people, the children of Israel, are more numerous and stronger than we. Come, let us outsmart it, and lest it become numerous, and it may be that if a war will occur, it too may join our enemies, and wage war against us and go up from the land.
Okay, so what is one of the principal anti-Semitic claims that are always made against the Jews in whatever country that we are in?
That they might join the enemy.
We're not fully loyal to that country, right? We are foreigners in that land. We're not fully loyal to that country. What does Paro say? Right? There'll be a war. What's going to happen? They'll join our enemies, right? And they'll wage war against us and go up from the land. Now, this is before the enslavement had begun, right? So he wasn't so concerned that we would leave the land, actually, right? But the concern was, well, the way Rashi understands it, it was a way of saying they'll force us out of the land. They will usurp this land and take it away from us.
Where do you see that?
Rashi says that.
Oh, Rashi said.
That's how Rashi explains it. So therefore, what's the plan? Vayasimu alav. Yafi? Brucha aba'ah.
תודה. וישימו עליו שרי ניסים למען ענותו בסבלותם, ויבן הרי מסכנות לפרעה את פתאום ואת רעמסס, וכאשר יענו אותו כן ירבה וכן יפרוץ, ויקוצו מפני בני ישראל. ויעבדו מצרים לבני ישראל בפרך, וימררו את חייהם בעבודה קשה, בחומר ובלבנים ובכל עבודה בשדה, את כל עבודותם אשר עבדו בהם בפרך.
Good. So 11 in English, so they appointed?
So they appointed taskmasters over it in order to afflict it with their burdens. It built storage cities for Pharaoh, Pithom, and Ramses. But as much as they would afflict, it, so it would increase, and so it would spread out. And they became disgusted because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians enslaved the children of Israel with crushing harshness. They embittered their lives with hard work, with mortar, with bricks, and with heavy labor of the fields. All of their labors that they performed with them were with crushing harshness.
Okay, so therefore we go from being free people there to being enslaved. The Medrash tells us that it was a gradual descent, and it was taking advantage of our, in fact, patriotism, right? Because Jews are always trying to show that, in fact, we are patriotic. So there, in the Medrash, there was a general, build a brick day that everyone came to show that they were first online. And then again tomorrow. It was a gradual descent into this avodat farech, right? Which is avodat farech means work that is crushing, but farech is also a combination of two words, peh, rach. Peh means mouth words, rach means soft. That it started off with soft words, but then we were pulled in to this crushing labor. And then we're going to go to the next stage, where, well, first of all, vayasimu alav sarei misim. They placed, right, verse 11. So in English, they appointed taskmasters over it. Vayasimu alav. Right? What does alav mean? On
Singular.
On them.
Right? But is it right?
It's a singular.
On
okay.
Right, on it or on
It
him?
means,
On.
not dehumanize.
Okay, so to a certain degree,
And
it's not
Anoto
on
is also
them.
singular.
I'm sorry?
And Anoto is also
Right.
singular.
So throughout, there is this
nation.
dehumanization, right? It's not a nation of people, it's an it. It's an entity. It's a group, right? Which is so different than me that I don't feel I don't feel, besides any affinity, I don't even feel any human compassion or comparison, right? Relationship with.
There was a question. Levites were not enslaved?
Correct.
How come?
So as we saw before by Joseph during the famine, that the spiritual leaders of a group were given different laws.
But they were physically there.
They were physically there, but they were not enslaved.
But that's
right?
only a midrash, isn't it? I mean, the Torah doesn't tell us.
Yeah.
The Torah doesn't tell us that.
No.
What the Torah does tell us, well, we'll see, right? By Paro, right. He says, why should Moshe and Aaron, Moses and Aaron, interrupt the people from their work, right? How about Moshe and Aaron's work, right? How about Aaron's work himself? Why wasn't Aaron working, right? So it doesn't say anything explicitly, but the fact that Aaron himself wasn't working, wasn't involved in the work, that wasn't an issue for Aaron to go back to work, but that Aaron is interfering with the other people's work, right? That is an indication that they were not, right, involved in the actual work.
So I
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
I was
kol
in
yom
Israel,
ha'orah.
and I went to Parashat HaShavua
Where? In
in
English?
Israel. So she said there.
Not in Manimar?
The Rebbe said that not only that the Levites were not enslaved, they were not working in this hard work. They were, the Parsha said, that the commentary said, that they were actually establishing the Beit Midrash, and there were a lot of study of Torah during all this enslaving time.
But
I don't know where it comes from, but that's what you said.
You know, based on that midrash that it was National Bring Out the Brick Day that got things started, the Levites said, "Thank you, but we're busy with our learning, with our study, so we're not going to participate in the National Bring Out the Brick Day." So they never were sucked into that whole slavery.
So they were just responsible for the continuing of learning and
the spirituality,
spiritual life, even though they were enslaved.
Yafi, you can't keep you away. You go to Israel, you go to a shiur.
I was listening to
I went to Chabad.
That's right. I was listening to
all the same guy.
Bar Ilan, and the professor was talking about that we teach the children so much midrashim, and first we teach midrashim, and it puts so much. It's so much in their mind that he said that Bar Ilan University had classes, he had to argue with students, they tell them it's so and so and so, and he said, where in the Torah? Show me.
Right.
It's not true. It's only Midrash, and they don't believe him, and you have to show it. So we too much.
In this class we do try to stay focused mostly on the text and what we see from the text itself.
That's right.
Yes.
From the beginning, though, when Yosef had the family come, he had the Levites separated. They were always separated from the beginning.
Were they? Do we see that in the Torah itself?
How do they physically separate it?
Now, one of the things that I left out was a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Yosef, right? Who did not know Yosef, meaning, all of a sudden, either it was really a new king, right, or it was an old king, but either way, he's forgetting all of the benefits that Yosef had brought to Mitzrayim. And then it starts off, yes, Dov.
He's not elected, I don't think, right? He's like a dictator, correct?
Who?
Yes, he is. Paro.
So that must mean
it's
these
hereditary.
people came to him and said, you want to stay in power? This you're going to do.
Not sure. Perhaps. Right? We don't see that from the Psukim, though. Vayomer. Melech Mitzrayim LaMialdot, Pasuk Tedvav. The king of Egypt said to the Mialdot Evriot, to the Hebrew midwives, Shema Achat Shifra, Shema Shenit Pua. The names were Shifra and Pua. Rashi brings the message. It actually was Miriam and Yocheved. V'yom v'yalechet Evriot. When you give birth to the Jewish woman, Uri'itim alav nayim. You'll see by the birthing stool there. Im beinhu v'amitanotov im bati v'chaya. If it's a son, if it's a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, allow her to live. Now, the original plan was to do this in a hidden manner, right? Meaning that, tragedy, I'm so sorry, right? The child died during childbirth, right? That was the original plan, to do it in a hidden manner. The Mialdot feared God. They did not do as they were instructed. And they kept the boys also alive. Right? Why are you doing this? Etc. 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 And then what happens? Vayitzav in 296. Vayitzav Paro chol amo leimor kol ben hayilor yor tashichu v'chol bat techayom. Right? Paro commanded his entire people, saying, every son that will be born into the Nile, you shall throw him.
His entire people, meaning
yes.
Egyptians.
Everyone, yes. And every daughter shall you keep alive.
No, only the Jews, not the
Yes.
Egyptians.
Well, simply it's the Jews.
People, his entire people.
Well, according to the Medrash, yes. The simple pshat would be, he commanded all people, instead of it being this hidden way of decimating, Rashi says that. Instead of this hidden way of decimating, right? So now it already became open legislation, right? And we look back at a Nazi Germany, and we see how first it was covered and it was behind closed doors, and then it turned into what it turned into. I just saw yesterday. There's I think it's a British show. I saw an article about it in Algemeiner. It's a British show about traveling, finding the traveling antique show, finding different antiques that people have and discovering fascinating things.
No?
I'm sorry?
Antique.
Yeah. And they came to this. They came across this board game, a German board game from 1938, children's board game, and the game was you had to try to collect as many Jews and bring them to a collection point. And this person said it was just so chilling to see that this was a children's game. That this was what was being inculcated into children. That you gather and you collection point and then, right? And
teaching the Palestinians.
Yeah.
But on page 296 in commentaries, it says entire people, meaning Egyptians.
Yes. So the Medrash says that according to this right, according to the Medrash, Rashi brings, the astrologers had said this is the day that the Jewish Savior is going to be born, and they didn't know if he was going to be right Egyptian or Jewish. Right now, these astrologers, they see but they don't see clearly. Actually, we can understand their confusion because Moshe was Egyptian. He was brought up in the palace of Paro. Right, when he comes to the daughters of Yitro, they say an Egyptian man saved us. right? So Moshe did have this almost dual identity, right? So we can understand why they had that confusion in that vision that they saw. There was a confusion, is it an Egyptian or is it a Hebrew? And therefore, the decree was to everyone. But this is what I want to focus on now. What is it that the Torah tells us about Moshe? What is it that the Torah lets us know about this, our greatest leader, right? The prophet, there'll never be a prophet like him. What does the Torah tell us about him? First of all, Vayelech ish mi beit Levi vayikach et bat Levi vatahar isha vateled ben. A man went from the house of Levi, and he married a daughter of Levi. And she became pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. And so many religions who have all of this drama about the birth of their leader, the birth of their god, and even countries, right? The Emperor of Japan, right, until after World War II was considered to be, right, a god, right? And I actually wrote it up in the newsletter for this week, right? Kim Jong-il from North Korea, right? He was born under a double rainbow. I mean, you have all of this.
He's God himself.
I'm sorry?
He's God himself.
Oh yeah, right? And the Torah is letting us know right from the get-go. How was Moshe born? A man from the house of Levi took a daughter of Levi, and she got pregnant. And she gave birth the old-fashioned way. Thank you, Dove. Right? The non-dramatic way. Right? There was nothing immaculate about this. Right? It was, as Dove said very well, it was the old-fashioned way. And why doesn't it tell us, right, who the man is and who the mother is? Why doesn't it tell us that? What does that teach us by not telling us who they are?
Ordinary people give birth to exceptional people.
Right? Right? So ordinary people can give birth to exceptional human beings. Ken?
He had a daughter before,
Ken?
Yocheved, and
Miriam.
Yeah.
And now
V'gam Aharon.
he married with different women.
No, the same.
It's the same
Okay.
one.
Okay, so you're asking a good question. Right? He took her and he gave birth to a son, and then they're going to hide him, and then when they can't hide him anymore, they're going to put him into a basket, right? Into the river, and the sister is there from a distance, we're going to see. So 1 second, right? If he just married her, right, what's up with the sister? Right? That's not the old-fashioned way, it seems, right? That there's a sister the sister was born before they got married, right? So, again, the Medrash explains over here that they had been married already, and they had separated. Why had they separated? Because of the pasuk that we just read up above. Every boy is being thrown into the river, is being killed. So they said, how could we stay married? How could we continue to have children when it's for this death? The Medrash says that Miriam, their daughter, said to them, you are worse than Paro. Paro's decree was against the boys, but your actions are against boys and girls. And therefore, they remarried, so to speak. And then Moshe, this child, was born. Okay? Now they put him into the river. The sister stands at a distance in Pasuk Dalid. L'deya mal yasalo, to know what will be with him. Right? And the Medrash says to know what will be with her prophecy. What will be with her prophecy. And then we know that the daughter of Paro comes and takes him in, right? And ends up hiring the mother to nurse the child, right? So here we have a situation where the mother thought she was giving up her child, the life of her child, and instead what happens? Her child is saved, and she is paid to nurse that child.
And she gives him a Jewish home for a longer time than
Yes, yes. Okay, but as we said before, the Torah is not letting us know, the Torah is letting us know, A, that his birth was normal, and B, it's irrelevant who his parents are, it's irrelevant who our parents are. What's important is who we are. That's what matters. Moshe's parents, nondescript. It was Amram, it was great people. Nondescript. That's not the issue over here.
But it's not totally true, Rabbi, because according to Judaism, it is important who your parents are.
Meaning what?
Meaning, if you want to marry, or it's important where you come from.
What?
Okay.
Or otherwise,
Okay.
or otherwise, you have to convert. So
Okay.
that is a question that is asked of you.
100%.
Who your parents are.
100%.
I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's an.
What I'm saying is, look, in order to be, there are certain parameters for a person to be Jewish, okay? And in order to, and a person who's Jewish, right, must marry someone else who is Jewish, right? I'm not saying that it doesn't matter who the parents are to determine the Jewish status, right? It matters who the parents are to determine is a person a Kohen, is a person a Levi, is a person a Yisroel, is a person a Mamzer, right? All of that matters. What I'm saying is, though, the greatness of a person, that is in their hands.
But
Right?
you
And
also
that is
said
not
Rabbi
set.
was special.
That is not set from, right? And, and a mamzer can have a greater share in Olam Haba, could be a tzaddik, a righteous person, right? That's right. That's up to one's own actions.
Rabbi,
Yes.
is there a similarity in terms of the redemption? Because he comes to save again the Jewish nation, and Noah, because Noah also, and he was in a teva, and they use the same word teva, basket, and it's made with Torah.
Yeah.
Then he's in the basket alone, although he's got people watching over him.
Interesting.
But
right. The same word teva, right? Ark, or is used for Noah's Ark. Right. She pointed out that the same word is used for Noah's Ark as a teva, and Moshe's basket, right? Right, is also a teva. Yeah. And each of them, right, led to a saving of the world. Yeah. Interesting.
From water.
Yeah. Involving water. Yeah.
Question. Talking about how important it is to know where you came from. Not talking even about conversion. It's important. I'm not even talking about the genetic predispositions of a physicality, but the soul is considered to be of a child is considered to be part mother, part father, and part God.
The child is considered part mother, part father, part God. The soul. I don't know if the soul is part mother, father, right? I think the soul is fully God. Yeah.
So parents are not responsible.
I was starting to tell you a great story, and I didn't have the whole thing. I think I have it now. That there was a boy in Rav Moshe's yeshiva who wanted to continue studying. The parents were Russian. The parents didn't really have a background to appreciate the learning in yeshiva, right? So they were against it, right? And the father, who had once heard this teaching that you just mentioned, that a child is part parent, mother, father, and God, the three partners in every person. So they said, look, I'm sure God wants him to learn, right? But his mother and father don't, right? So it's 2 against 1, right? We have to go with that. So Rav Moshe said to him, and Rav Moshe's answer was, he was so impressed by the answer that he agreed, and this was a Russian mathematician, I believe, he agreed to let the boy learn in yeshiva, right? So Rav Moshe said to him, I think your math is wrong. He said, what do you mean math is wrong? Mother, father is 2, and God is 1, it's 2 against 1, right? Right? Rav Moshe said, no, you're making a mistake. Let me explain. He said, you, you the father, you are a composite of 3, right? Right? Your mother, your father, and God, right? And your mother is a composite of 3, right? So what happens? Each person, each parent has 3 votes. Okay. So you are 2 for him not staying in yeshiva, and the God part of you says he stood. So it's 2-1, right? Now your wife is the same. So it's 4-2 against staying in yeshiva. God has his 3 votes. So now it's 5-4 in favor of him remaining in yeshiva. Right? And this Russian mathematician was so impressed with that answer. He said, if that's how the minds work over here, then I think he'll gain a lot by staying in yeshiva. And he allowed him to remain in the yeshiva. So it's not 2-1, it's not 2-1 this way, it's 5-4 going that way.
Wait,
Okay,
Rabbi,
yes.
Did you say before that it is said in some circles that Noah's soul was like that Moshe was the Gilgal?
I didn't say that.
I did hear that somewhere.
I didn't.
Okay, but I did find the part, and I'll show this to you after class, about why I think that the priests were established earlier.
Okay. Okay. So let's hear about this Moshe. This Moshe is brought up so we haven't heard anything that Moshe himself has done. So far, things are being done with Moshe. Let's take a string in English from verse 5. Someone verse 5 in English, take it for us, please.
What page?
297.
Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe by the river, and her maids walked along the river. She saw the basket among the reeds, and she sent her maidservant, and she took it. She opened it and saw him, the boy, and behold, a youth was crying. She took pity on him and said, this is one of the Hebrew boys. His sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, should I go and summon for you a wet nurse from the Hebrew woman who will nurse the boy for you? The daughter of Pharaoh said, no. The girl
said, go.
Go. And the girl went and summoned the boy's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this boy and nurse him for me, and I will give you pay. So the woman took the boy and nursed him. The boy grew up, and she brought him to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he was a son to her. She called his name Moses, as she said, for I drew him from the water.
Okay, now just the name, the most common verse, pasuk in the Torah is Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying. Who gave him the name Moshe? Right, the daughter of Paro. Right, we learned we have a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, which in Chronicles, which goes through all the different names that Moshe had. Right, Avigdor. There are many names that Moshe had. Right, but the one name that is used throughout the Torah is Moshe, because Paro is the one who was Moseret Nefesh. Paro's daughter is the one who pushed herself and went beyond to have compassion and to take in this Hebrew boy when it was her father who had made the decree that every boy should be killed. Right? So it was that Mesirut Nefesh. It was that going above and beyond. So that is the name. That became inculcated into Moshe. This willingness, as we'll soon see, to do that which is right even when it is unpopular, even when it's going against what everyone else seems to be doing and accepting.
So, Rabbi, I'm having a hard time understanding this. The fortune tellers told Pharaoh that a Jewish redeemer is going to be born. And
That
so,
a redeemer for the Jews will be born.
And so that's why he wanted all the kids in the night, drowned. And here, it's like Hitler's daughter saying, here's the person, calling, saving a Jew, like let's say from the gas chambers, and saying Jew of gas chamber, naming it that, and then this child grows up. Hitler would have realized, wait a second, she named him
Interesting.
Jew from the water.
Well, I'm not sure if everyone knew exactly what the whole Moshe meant, right? I'm not sure, right? But fundamentally, how was Paro okay with this?
Yeah, it does.
Right? How was Paro okay with this?
Maybe he wasn't okay, but it's his daughter. He loved her. He let her have her whims.
Yeah, I'm not sure. One thing that we see clearly from here, that we've discussed a number of times, is that God allows us our free will. He does not interrupt our free will. He allows us our free will, but our free will is only on the actions that we take, not on the results or on the consequences. So there is what we call the master plan, and then we have our free will, and it is our free will that then gets woven into the tapestry of the master plan. The master plan was that there would be this Jewish redeemer. Paro has his free will, and he makes his decree. And his decree is that every boy will be thrown into the river to be killed. Right? You want to make that decree? That's your prerogative. You're the king. You have your free will. The decree is made. That gets woven into the tapestry. And that boy who was following the rule, the law, is thrown into the river. That boy is saved. Irony of irony, by none other than Paro's daughter himself. Irony of irony, for some reason, whatever it is, it's because his daughter and she cried, or Paro wasn't aware of all that was going on and didn't think that this was a child that was from that time period, right? Whatever it might be, right? Remember, Moshe was premature, right? And therefore, right, it didn't seem, right? He wouldn't seem to be from that time period, perhaps. Whatever the case is, it was Paro's decree, as we mentioned many times before. It was Paro's decree that was meant to prevent the Savior of Israel, that caused him to feed, house, clothe, and educate the Savior of Israel. So exactly what was going on that Paro allowed this? Was it sentimentality on behalf of his daughter because she kept crying and so he let it go? Whatever it is, I don't know. I don't know that it's spoken of. I'm not sure. But I think what's important to us is this broader theme that we have our free will. Everyone has their free will, right? But God's master plan is what will come about, and our free will be woven into that master plan.
Do you think that her compassion on this little baby got so hard that she said, this is the right thing to do, and that's it.
She did the right thing. Yeah.
I would like to just mention that if we read this Parsha, Paro is all about death. He decrees, and it's really about that. The women are all about life, and it starts from Yocheved, and then Miriam, and even the daughter of Paro.
Yeah.
She is about life, and very rarely the women are mentioned in the Torah, like when they say the Parsha.
And why was Chava called? Why was Chava called Chava? Em Kol Chai, right? The mother of all that is living. Yeah, absolutely. But so far we haven't heard anything that Moshe has done.
It was a
Right? Now what happens? Page 298. Vayihi bayamim hahem vayigdal Moshe vayetze el echav vayar besivlotam vayar ish mitzri makeh ish ivri me echav.
How did he know that they are
And it was in those days Moshe grew up and he went out to his brothers. So it seems that Moshe was aware at some point that he was from those people. But there was nothing more different than he and those people. He was in the palace of the Pharaoh, and they were these slaves. But what did he do? He went out to his brothers. So we've gone from that alav, that dehumanization that Pharaoh had to the Jewish people, to Moshe being raised as an Egyptian, but aware that these were his brothers and connecting to them as his brothers. Vayar besivlotam, and he saw their burdens, he saw their difficulties. Vayar, and he saw Ish Mitzri, and Ish Mitzri, Maka Ish Ivri, who was beating an Ish Ivri, a Hebrew man, May Echav. Right? At that point he needed to decide, who am I? Who am I? And it was very clear. The Ish Mitzri was hitting an Ish Ivri, and Moshe was a combination of an Ish Mitzri and an Ish Ivri, an Egyptian man and a Hebrew man, but it was very clear to him, May Echav. We're repeating again, from his brothers. Right? That was who he was. That was his allegiance. And this person was beating this Hebrew man to death. Vayifen ko v'cho, he turned this way and turned that way. Vayar ki ein ish, saw there was no man, right? Simply there was no one seeing. Vayach et ha-mitzri v'yitmenehu b'chol. Right? And he struck down that Egyptian to save the life of his brother, the Hebrew, and he hid him in the sand.
And then he found
the first thing that we hear about Moshe is compassion for his brother, saving the life of his brother, even though it meant taking an extreme means of taking the life who was murdering his brother, endangering himself, endangering his whole stature over there, all that he had. He was endangering that to help those who had so much less than he. That is what we hear about Moshe. Next.
Actually, the first thing is his identity.
Echav. Yes.
He's
right.
Understand that he's not an Egyptian. That he's
right. And acting on that.
Right.
And acting on that to his own detriment, to his self-detriment, to his self-harm.
But then we see that he has to walk.
Vayetze bayom hasheni. He went out on the second day.
Nothing new.
V'hinei. I'm sorry? His brother. Vayetze bayom hasheni went on the second day. V'hinei shnei anashim ivrim nitzim. There were two Hebrew men who were fighting. Vayomer l'rosh, and he turned to one of them, Lama takereyecha? Why are you hitting your friend? Right? Don't we have enough? Don't we have enough problems with the hits that we're getting from the Egyptians? Why are you hitting Reyecha? Right? Why are you hitting your fellow, your friend?
Yes.
Vayomer. And he said to me, Samcha li'ish sar v'shafet aleinu. Right? Who made you the officer, the judge over us? Halahargeni ata omer kasher haragta et hamitzri. Are you going to kill us the same way that you killed that Egyptian? Vayira Moshe. Moshe was frightened. Vayomer, and he said, Achein no davar. Simple meaning, now the matter is known that I killed that Egyptian who was, again, mercilessly beating the Hebrew man. Right? Now I'm in danger. The Medrash says, now I understand why they are going through such persecution. If there is this lashon hara, if there is this speaking badly about one another, if there is this infighting, then I understand. And the commentators, I think it's the Kli Yakar, says that it is this infighting that has led to all of the difficulties that the Jewish people, that we as a nation have suffered. Right? It all comes back to how is it that we treat one another. Matan Torah by the Torah by Mount Sinai. It says Vayichan in the singular, and he camped, not they camped. We were Ki'ish Echad V'Leiv Echad. We were united, and the destruction of the temple, we are taught, was because of this infighting, right? This lack of unity, right, amongst us. This has been throughout. Moshe therefore the matter became known to Paro. Moshe needed to flee. And he goes out to a well. And what happens at that well? You'd think Moshe would have learned his lesson and said, the last time I stick my nose into other people's business, right? Try to do a good thing. What do we say? No good deed goes unpunished, right? And you think he'd have learned his lesson. He didn't learn his lesson, thankfully. What happened? The Kohen Midian, the priest of Midian, had 7 daughters. They came, Batidlena, and they came and they drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's sheep. The shepherds came and drove them away. In order to do what? To steal the water that they had drawn to water their sheep. What happens? Moshe gets involved. Right? Vayakam Moshe arose Vayoshian, and he saved them. Vayashk et tzonam, and he watered their sheep. So once again, we see Moshe. Right? What we see is the Ben Adam L'Chaveiro. What we see is taking care of other people, even when it's not popular, even when it's going to be seemingly harmful to himself.
But it's more than taking care of other people. I feel like it's an ability to see good and evil.
Yeah.
And the infighting that you're talking about.
And to stand up for it.
Yeah, that takes a lot of courage. But the infighting that you're talking about, how did the Egyptians, what infighting?
Between Jews.
The infighting was these 2 Jews fighting with one another, and then spreading the word, right? Spreading the word about what Moshe had done to save one of them, right? The next pasuk was, the matter became heard to Paro. Paro heard the matter.
Cheryl, 13 on page 299.
Now,
by the way,
Moshe.
thing they show him as the Ish Mitzri. I said it's interesting that they looked at him and they saw Ish Mitzri,
What does it mean?
Yeah.
Egyptian person.
Yeah.
And so it's interestingly, Moshe, he has both of them thing. He's supposedly Ish Mitzri, but really inside.
Yes, they say to their
that
father,
one
an
that
Egyptian
he-
man. Right? There's a beautiful medrash on that. Just very briefly, the medrash, they said an Egyptian man saved us. It was an Egyptian man, it was Moshe. So they tell a parable of a child who went to swim in a lake, right? And the child started to drown, right? And there was a man far off who was attacked by a horde of bees. So what did the man do? He went running, and jumped into the lake. Right? When he got to the lake, he sees the child is struggling in the water, so he rescues the child. Right? The kid comes home, right? And he's, must say, what happened to you? You look terrible. It looks like you went through the washing machine. He goes, Mom, I was drowning. He's like, and what happened? What happened? I was saved by a swarm of bees. Right? I was saved, that's what the Medrash says. I was saved by a swarm of bees. And it's true. Right? He was saved by a swarm of bees that bit the man, that attacked the man who ran to, right, the Chad Gadya. Right? Right? So they said, the Medrash is saying that they said an Ish Mitzri. Right? Who's the Ish Mitzri? The Ish Mitzri was the Egyptian man, right? That Moshe had killed, who was beating the Jew that Moshe had killed, which caused him to have to run away. The Ish Mitzri saved us. What does that do for us? That does a lot for us. First of all, when it comes to our sense of appreciation, to not just look at the last step, but to look to that which led up to that and to feel that appreciation. I had a lot of nachas when friends of ours from Muncie who they were the parents of twins that were very, very close to my youngest son. So she said, I have to tell you what your son did. She said, your son called me on my son's birthdays. They were twins. And he called me to thank me for raising such good friends. He called me to thank me for giving birth and raising such good friends of his. That was nachas for me to hear that. That was nice to hear. And she was so impressed that he thought to call the mother on their birthday to thank the mother. Right? So that's one lesson of the Ish Mitzri. The Ish Mitzri, that was my son Yehoshua. The Ish Mitzri is the one who saved us. But another important lesson there is, how often has it happened that something that we thought was bad ended up being good for us? And something that we thought was so good ended up not being quite so good for us. So we have to remember the Ish Mitzri. We all have many Ish Mitzris in our life. Egyptian man, right? The Egyptian man that saved us. We have to remember also that there are lots of situations that we bemoan and say, oh, it was an Ish Mitzri, oh, this terrible situation. But out from that often comes the brachot. And to recognize and to accept that there is this master orchestrator who is taking care of events that take place here. And that there is a reason, there is a purpose that goes into everything. Who is it that just told me, just yesterday, someone said to me, someone just told me, I call this a Ciner moment at this point, no longer a senior moment, right? Oh, that someone was going to donate a kidney, and they went to, right, I think they actually went to the removal of the kidney, and when they did, they discovered that there was cancer growing in this person's body. right?
Wow.
Had this person not donated the kidney, right? He was healthy, everything was fine, there was no indication of it, right? I mean, just there is this master plan that is enveloping us in all that goes on. So we should not bemoan the Ish Mitzri. First of all, to look back, and our appreciation should go back a few steps, right? And also to appreciate the Ish Mitzri. So then Moshe now is shepherding the sheep of Yitro. And what happens? And he comes to this strange sight, right? 301. Right, an angel of Hashem appeared to him in a blaze of fire from in the bush. He saw, and behold, and the bush was burning the fire. The bush was not consumed. Moses thought, Asura, I will turn aside, ve'ereh, and I will see at Tamareh Gadol Hazeh, this strange sight. Right, lama lo. What's the exact word? Lama madua lo yiv'ar hasneh. Why is this sneh? Why is this bush not burning? Strange pasuk Dalet 4. Vayar Hashem kisar lirot. God saw that he had turned to see, and he called out to him from the bush. The implication is, had he not turned to see, then God would not have called out to him. Now, what's the big deal that he turned to see? So the Medrash explains that the point is not that he turned to see the bush. Of course, anyone will turn to see this strange phenomenon of a bush burning, but it not being consumed. God had seen that he turned to see, right? Vayar, back on 298. What was that pasuk? The first we heard about Moshe. Vayar, he saw b'siv lotam, right? Pasuk 11. And he observed, he saw b'siv lotam. God saw that he had turned to see. Because he had turned to see the burdens, the pain that his brothers were suffering, that's why God turned to him and appeared to him and said to him, I am the God, 303, of your father, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? I've seen the affliction of my people as in Egypt. I have heard its outcry, right? Just one second. I have heard their outcry. I've known its sufferings. I will descend and rescue, right? Etc., etc. Now, what's so strange is Pasuk Yud Aleph, verse 11. Moshe, who has been doing everything for these people, and now Hashem comes to him and says, I'm going to save them. And I will dispatch you to Paro, and you shall take my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moshe replies to God, who am I that I should go to Paro? I take the children of Israel out of Egypt. What happened? What happened over here? The person that everything we've heard about him has been helping the oppressed, right? Seeing what is right.
And courage.
Right? Courage. Going ahead and doing it. What happened over here that now all of a sudden, who am I?
But that is humility.
No, one thing is how people see you, and another thing
I
is what
think
you do.
humility. It's one we say about Moshe. That's one of the biggest things that we like about him, the leader. Because leader usually like Paro, he is full of himself. He's full of the ego.
He's not.
Moshe is not
he's
about
not the
ego.
self-promoter. Okay, good. So one approach is, this was Moshe's humility, right? I'm not the person, right? I can't do this. This is over my head, right? Too much, right? Another approach is that Moshe had an older brother, Aaron, who was almost the de facto leader of the children of Israel. So it's not for me to oust my brother, right? You should send Right? Shlachna biyad tishlachel later on say. Send with the one that you normally send.
And we just
Right?
had all the stories of a younger brother usurping the older.
Okay.
But that
Okay.
also show
Yeah.
him as humility and being a leader.
Okay.
Because rarely a leader will say, if you look at other leaders, they kill somebody in the family or whatever. He works together and there is no
Yes.
friction, no ego in the middle
Good.
to say you
Good.
can't do it.
So those are two approaches. A, humility. B, not wanting to oust his brother Aaron.
So Aaron is older than Moshe.
Yes.
How did he survive from Pharaoh's order to join the?
He wasn't born during that time of all the boys who will be born.
The decree
Right.
was
Right.
issued
He
later,
preceded.
Before.
Right. He
Is
preceded.
he older or Miriam's older?
Aaron, I believe, is the oldest. I believe Aaron, then Miriam, and then Moshe. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the Rashbam has a very beautiful approach. Right? Let's see the next pasuk. Vayomer Hashem said, Ki ayeh imach. Zelecha od ki nishalticha. I will be with you. This is a sign that I will send you. Botziacha, when you take out the people from Egypt, you will serve God on this mountain. Right? This was a mini Har Sinai. Right? What do we find on Mount Sinai? The mountain was burning. Right? It was on fire, but it wasn't burning. Right? Here we had a mini of that. America, that the sneh, that the bush was burning and it was not being consumed. Now, if it's burning and not being consumed, what does that mean? Why does something that's burning get consumed? Because that which is burning is the fuel for that fire. And therefore the fuel gets used up. It gets consumed. Right? What he was being shown in this vision was a vision of what will be by Har Sinai, that the source, the fuel, the power is not what it appears to be. The power, the fuel is coming from above. It might appear to be that this is what is fueling, but it's not fueling. The power comes from above. So the Rashbam learns very beautifully over here as follows. Moshe had two questions. He said, right, who am I to go to Paro? Right? You know, right? A regular person doesn't just walk in to Paro. And if I'm going to tell him I'm here to take the children out of Egypt, that's not going to be accepted all that well, right? And therefore we need to work, right? We find even when Shmuel HaNavi, Samuel the prophet, was told to go and anoint David, Shmuel said, how can I go? Saul will see me and he won't be too happy, he'll kill me. So even a person given directive by God needs to work within, Ein Somchin Al Hanes, we don't rely on the miracles, needs to work within the normal parameters. So he said, how can I go to Paro? Right? I can't walk to Paro and he won't listen to me. So the answer was, Ki Imach, right? I will be with you. Right? And therefore, you're not going in alone. You don't have to be afraid, intimidated going to Paro. And what will you tell him? Well, we'll take you out. You'll serve God on this mountain. Right? He can understand that you're going out in order to serve God. So that's how the Rashbam learns this. But the Beis Halevi, I believe, brings, based on the Medrash, understands as follows. Moshe understood, if I'm going to do it, it's not going to be permanent. It's not going to be the final redemption. It's going to be a redemption that will lead to another exile. And there might be a redemption from that, and then another exile. So Moshe said, Mi ani, mi anochi, kelech al Paro. Who am I that I should go to Paro? That I should take the children of Israel out from Mitzrayim? Let it not be done by me, by a human being. God, you do it directly. And then we know that that will be the final, ultimate redemption. It won't be a redemption which will lead to another exile and another exile and another exile. That was his concern. Hashem, why should we go through this? If it's too early and it's not yet the time for the full redemption, then let's not do it early. Don't do a half step.